Story 1. My boyfriend was at home while I was at the university, about a 20-minute walk away. I called to let him know I would be late because I forgot my umbrella and it was raining heavily, so I planned to wait until the rain died down. Next thing I knew, he showed up with an umbrella in hand. I felt like I was in a romantic comedy. Story 2. He noticed what I liked as we started spending time together and kept those things on hand at his house. It's like a magic portal for drinks, snacks, movies, and games every time I visit. Story 3. This was a coworker, not a romantic interest. However, he ordered me flowers on behalf of the company for an event and specifically instructed the florist to ensure they were non-toxic to cats so I could take them home. Just his remembering that I had a cat and putting that together in that way was much more thoughtful than most men trying to date me ever were. It really blew me away. Story 4. My now husband got up at 7:30 every day during our last semester to have breakfast in the cafeteria with me. He didn't have class until 10 o'clock and he doesn't usually eat breakfast. At that time, we weren't even dating yet. Story 5. Basically, he is a chameleon type who can adapt to situations easily. He has confidence but also pokes fun at himself and doesn't take himself too seriously. Story 6. He showed me that he had class, not just by what he said, but through his quiet and considerate actions toward me and others. Needless to say, I am one lucky person. Story 7. He was spending time with my boyfriend, who was bragging about cheating on me. The next night, when we were all together in a group, he asked if I would like to go for a walk with him before I went home, as he wanted to talk to me about something. He told me everything my boyfriend said about the girl because I deserved to know. He bought me a soda and talked to me while I processed it, never making me feel like he was taking advantage of the situation, as people sometimes do. Story 8. I met someone in an emergency room. His father was sick, and despite the stressful situation and long wait, he remained patient and reassuring. He comforted his father with the sweetest smile, making sure he felt at ease. The way he handled everything with grace and warmth really stood out to me. Story 9. I married my husband because he is the only man I have ever met who has truly apologized to me. He doesn't say things like, "Sorry you feel that way." I can work through any problem with him because he is not afraid to admit when he is wrong, and we face challenges together without damaging each other's pride. I was not that way when we met, but he allowed me to learn to be vulnerable and to apologize when I am wrong. Story 10. My now husband, after a few weeks of dating, showed up with a journal he had picked out. I mentioned in passing that I liked writing. It was a nice gesture. He saw it, thought of me, and handed it to me without fanfare when he picked me up for dinner. It was the listening, the thoughtfulness specifically for my interest, and the modest way he did it that showed he didn't need me to make a big deal about his gesture. I thought it was a sign he would be interested in me and thoughtful in small ways. 20 years later, I was right, and it has held true. Story 11. My little brother keeps tampons, pads, and ibuprofen in his glove box just in case a girl might need them one day. Story 12. Certain individuals will always stand out to me even years after we dated. One individual offered to walk me to my car in a parking garage without me asking. Another individual was an excellent communicator. Our conversations flowed easily, and I never had to wonder if a long silence meant he was withdrawing. He had established enough honesty that I knew he would come out and tell me rather than play games. A third individual brought me coffee at work when I was having a difficult day, and I almost cried from how unexpected the gesture was. He worked in the building next door and took time out of his day to stop, get my usual order, and then found a way to deliver it to me without disrupting my day, ensuring that the kindness did not become a burden. Story 13. My husband's pickup line was about the last book I read. I felt the need to talk to him. Story 14. I went on a date with a guy and wasn't feeling it romantically, so I let him know at the end of the date. He took it so well that I genuinely thought he didn't understand, so I explained again that I thought he was great, but I wasn't interested in dating. He said he understood completely and was happy to be friends. I was so used to men not being able to take rejection and becoming immature. Well, we've been together 9 years now and married for 4 years. He's the best guy ever, and I'm happy he was patient with me. Story 15. No woman likes being honked at while walking down the street, especially those under 18. Hopefully, this behavior was more common in the 90s and does not occur as frequently now. I no longer have to walk since I am an adult and can drive, so I am not sure about the current situation. However, it has been over 25 years, and I will never forget the man who simply waved at me. Story 16. A guy I work with, and I were having a conversation about traumas and how they manifest in sleep, such as sleep paralysis or night terrors. She mentioned something like, I'm pretty messed up. I've been to a mental hospital and everything. He responded with, we all have a past and we all have a story, in the most understanding and comforting way. Moments like that make me think, wow, this person is truly a good human. There was no judgment from him at all. Story 17. A man stands out when he is genuinely kind, listens attentively, remembers small details, and treats everyone with respect. Thoughtful actions leave the biggest impact. Story 18. I canceled a date because I was sick. He showed up half an hour later with medicine, soup, and the Lord of the Rings box set. Story 19. Reacting calmly to someone else's aggression is important. In situations that could lead to unnecessary confrontations, including physical altercations, it is valuable to have trust that a person will not be easily provoked and will actively help de-escalate the situation. Story 20. From the first time we met in person over 4 years ago, he looks at me like I'm the most precious thing in the world. No one has ever looked at me with such wonder in my entire life, and he takes such good care of me. The only time he made me cry was last week when he surprised me with a photo album of our cat who has been diagnosed with cancer and only has a few months left to live. I love this man so much. Story 21. When he knows exactly what he wants and is not afraid to admit it, especially in relationships, he knows you are the one for him and genuinely means it. Story 22. He can express emotions beyond just happiness, sadness, and anger, and he is not afraid to explore the root of those emotions to help with regulation. Story 23. Asking for consent before touching me is appreciated. I dislike how many people consider that an awkward thing to do. Story 24. He treated me like a human being with a distinct personality, respected and admired the qualities that make me who I am, and acted according to the information he had about me, respecting my desires and interests. Story 25. He changed his opinion on something when presented with evidence contrary to his original beliefs. He is one of the most thoughtful people I have ever met. He genuinely listens to others and carefully considers what they say. He never dismisses people without deeply reflecting on their words and perspectives. I can't wait to marry him. Story 26. I don't like kissing. I have had strangers and people I knew force it on me. My last partner was the only one who paid attention and never crossed that boundary or made me feel bad about it. Even when he really wanted to kiss me, I never had to explain it. He understood and respected my boundaries. Story 27. Before we started dating, my husband and I would go swimming every week, relax in the hot tub, and talk about work and other topics. He never once checked me out. His eyes never moved from my face. If he did glance elsewhere, he was very discreet about it because I never noticed. He was incredibly restrained and respectful. Story 28. A guy I met in line while getting a sandwich chatted a bit, and then stopped in traffic to bring me a chair to sit on as I waited in a light rain for theater tickets. It was one of the best moments of my life. I still have that fold-up camper chair and will keep it until my death. Story 29. This man always surprised me with the small details he remembered about me. I wouldn't even recall mentioning how much I liked something, but he would. Story 30. I love my son as my own, no matter who he is. He came into our lives when my son was turning 3, and since then, he has always been his boy. Story 31. He delivered lunch to me at work when I forgot to bring mine. I had a stressful day and was feeling tense. Every time I became anxious, he would gently push me back into a relaxed position. I didn't even notice he was doing it until I reflected on my day. He insists that I get enough sleep on my days off since I work overnight, and most people expect me to adjust my sleeping pattern to fit their schedules. Story 32. Leaving little notes in my bag or somewhere in the house, or making my lunch for me even when I have late night shifts. Story 33, he mentioned alternative contraceptives for men in a conversation and how unfair it is that there is a pill for women but not for men, and that the financial aspects are quite unfair. I don't know if it's just me, but most men I have met never had a single thought about preventing pregnancy, believing it is solely a woman's responsibility. He is my boyfriend now. Story 34. My ex and I are still great friends. He lives in the same city as my mother, who lives alone and has no family in town, as all of us children and grandchildren live out of state. He checks in on her and brings her jigsaw puzzles, which she loves, along with juice, fruits, and vegetables. He may have been a bad boyfriend, but I truly appreciate him for these gestures. Story 35. Every time we walk into a place he has been before, the workers smile when they see him and joyfully remember him. This happens at 7-Eleven, Subway, and literally anywhere we go. Story 36. I went on a first date with a guy, walking around a cute town and getting coffee. He always made sure I walked on the inside of the sidewalk, and at the end, he said something like, "I'd love to take you out to dinner." I ended up not feeling it and told him I genuinely just wanted to be friends because I still enjoyed him as a person, just platonically. I still wonder if that was the right decision because I think about him from time to time. He was the nicest and most respectful man I've ever dated. Story 37. When my husband and I first started dating, we went out to dinner. It was raining outside, and there was a homeless man seeking shelter at the front entrance. People were laughing and being mean to him, but my boyfriend invited him to sit with us and order whatever he wanted from the menu. He bought his dinner. I knew I wanted to marry him that night. The kind man gave us random trinkets from his shopping cart, and we still have them to this day. Story 38. When my husband and I first started dating, I was making buffalo chicken wraps. It was our second date, and I was trying to make something simple since we were both broke college students. Before I could even try to problem solve, he ran out the door and drove to the store. He knew it was important to me and didn't need to be asked. He still does that in our marriage, trying to anticipate what I need or want and making things happen. I love having a proactive partner. Story 39. When my husband picked me up for our first date, his car was clean, he smelled nice, he was nicely dressed, and he was polite and friendly the whole time. That alone made him stand out in a great way. Story 40. Just being a genuinely thoughtful and kind human being without any expectations of receiving anything in return. Story 41. I grew up in an environment where arguments were loud with shouting to get points across. I thought this was the norm. My first argument with my boyfriend, now husband, was very mature. He never yelled, was empathetic, and listened to me, expressing his points calmly without making me feel bad. We ended up having a constructive conversation and resolved it peacefully, then enjoyed ice cream afterward. For years later, he has still never yelled at me. I also don't yell, but that's because I tend to cry. Story 42. I used to store my debit card in my bra. One night, a group of friends and I were getting ready to go out, and I pulled my shirt out to place the card in my bra. The moment our male friend noticed what was happening, he turned away and waited briefly before turning around. It was the most gentlemanly thing I have ever seen a man do. Story 43. I had an ex who I went on a second date with in the city. We didn't realize it was match day, and the crowds were overwhelming. He told me he was really uncomfortable in large crowds, so I expected him to lean on me for support. Instead, he took my hand and guided us through the crowd. This man, who mentioned having a phobia, pushed through it for me. I found it to be a sweet gesture, and I wish I had expressed that to him at the time, as we didn't last much longer after that. Story 44. So, a few things in a romantic sense. 1. Ask me out in person. This is easy, but you wouldn't believe how few men would do this. At the end of the first date, there should be zero pressure for kissing, sex, or anything else. Kind, warm hug and tentative plans for the next date would be great. For example, you could say, "I'd like to go out with you again on Sunday. Let me know what you think." 3. I used to sing in a church choir and invited him to come. He did, wearing a suit even though my church allows blue jeans, and he did not belong to my faith group. So I married him and it's been amazing. I don't know what dating is like now, but I felt like I was deep in the peak of app dating while living in a large city. I was single and dating there for 4 years. It was wild how many dates I went on and how few made me feel like they saw me as just an attractive figure with physical attributes instead of just an attractive orifice. Story 45. He noticed and complimented my nails. I had some elaborate Halloween nail art that I worked hard on and was proud of. I was impressed that he recognized the time and effort that goes into that kind of thing, where many straight men take it for granted, don't notice, or view it as a shallow, frivolous interest. Story 46. I was being flirtatious and sexual because I was heartbroken and felt like that was the easiest coping mechanism. I know he understands my intentions, but he wasn't engaged. He genuinely kept shrugging it off, but in a way that didn't make me feel dismissed. He's also attractive, and I know he's the type of guy who would go for it, but I think he respects me. I like it. I like men like him. Story 47. We went window shopping, exploring some stores and a mall. I made casual remarks, such as, "Oh, that's cute." For Christmas, which was a couple of weeks later, he gave me everything I liked on our shopping day: jewelry, clothes, and more. It was really nice and unexpected. Another time, my college boyfriend and I were discussing graduation, and I mentioned that I would lose my nickname when I entered the real world. For no reason at all, he went out and had an ID bracelet engraved with my nickname and gave it to me. That was so thoughtful. Story 48. When people are kind to animals, it reflects positively on their character and reveals much about them, even if you do not know them well yet. Story 49. I really liked the wet wipes my boyfriend keeps at his place and casually mentioned it to him. The next time he went grocery shopping, he bought me those wipes. It was so random but also very thoughtful. Story 50. My husband arranged for my brother-in-law to drive 40 minutes to pick me up after I couldn't continue driving due to significant pain from my spinal injury. Both are wonderful people. Story 51. Respect my boundaries. When I take time to respond, they understand that I have a life and do not overwhelm me with messages. Respect is appealing. Story 52. I met my husband when we were 17. Our first interaction was very uplifting. I had just passed a test, and our teacher would announce who passed by saying their name followed by pass. When my husband heard that I passed, he looked at me and said, "Wow, awesome, good job." I responded with a thank you. I didn't really know him at the time, but I thought he was attractive, and it was nice for someone I didn't know to be rooting for me. He often congratulated me when I passed a test, gave me a high five, and eventually found a way to join my conversation with a friend. We ended up exchanging social media information. He is very charismatic, and his way of asking for my information was, "Oh, is he your best friend? I think I could out-best friend him. You don't have his info? Well, you'll have mine, and I'll be the better best friend." It was definitely an excuse for him to get my information and message me in a cheeky way. He texted me, "Slide. I just slid into your DMs." He continued to court me, and one thing I absolutely love is how he always opens the door for me. He did that then, and he still does. It's just a little gesture that fills my heart with joy. He even made me metal-welded flowers with a love note saying his love for me will last as long as the flower does, and much more, of course. That love note is on our fridge. We're 24 now, and I can't wait to continue living life with this man. Story 53. When I was still in university, I went home every other weekend, which involved a commute of about 2 to 3 hours. My boyfriend at the time also returned home on weekends, but his hometown was about 2 hours in the opposite direction. Still, he would insist on driving me home so I wouldn't have to take the bus, even though it was out of his way, resulting in a total drive of around 6 hours for him. On Sunday, he would also pick me up. Story 54. Great self-control. We were in a meeting at work, and a very competent person was being unfairly criticized by his superior, who needed to put someone down. The individual stood there stoically, neither cringing nor flinching. He allowed the superior to finish his remarks and then continued with his presentation. No response, no defending himself, no apology. I felt deeply moved. This was kindness, but not the naive or pacifying kind. It was the type of kindness that comes from having a lot of power, knowing incriminating information about a person, and still choosing not to harm them. I was in awe. Story 55. A couple of things come to mind. A guy I dated years ago figured out that I have time blindness due to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. While I was always ready for dates on time, I usually stressed myself out to do so. He started telling me our plans were for 15 minutes earlier than they really were and would then call to let me know he was running late. It took me a while to pick up on it. It was probably the first time someone didn't make me feel bad about that particular struggle. Before we lived together, my now husband stocked an entire shelf of his refrigerator with my favorite kombucha. He still does things like this all the time, just because he wants my life to be enjoyable and to make me feel special. Story 56. I do not post on Reddit at all, but this story makes me feel like the most loved person in the world. Some time ago, my female friend messaged me at 1 a.m. saying that she heard a woman screaming somewhere nearby. She lives in an apartment building. She couldn't help. She was alone and scared. She wanted to assist but just asked me to calm her down, and all I could do was talk to her. I was at work and couldn't physically be there to help her. Yes, she did call the police, but they ignored her request since we live in a country where you can almost legally harm your relatives. I told my partner the whole story without any intentions. I just needed to vent a little bit. It was probably a domestic violence situation, which triggers a massive response for me. I couldn't calm down and hid my panic from my friend as much as I could. I just wanted someone to listen to my story. The next thing I knew, he was picking up his things and leaving his apartment. I didn't tell him the address again. He remembered it since we had been there once, and somehow that was enough for him. He got there in an hour, the drive itself was more than 50 minutes, and asked her which apartment it was. He was ready to confront the aggressor with his bare hands. By the time he arrived, the screaming had already stopped. She didn't know the exact location, so they started to search, but it was quiet in every single apartment. Then he sat down alone and stayed there until 4 a.m. in case he heard something suspicious. I didn't know the whole situation was happening until my friend called me again, telling me that he had arrived. I cried. I wouldn't have asked him to come, and I didn't. This was the last thing in the world I could have expected, even though I already knew he was the best person I had ever met. It was some time ago, and I thank him daily. He laughs it off, telling me that he didn't do enough since he didn't find the aggressor. I always make sure to make him feel as loved as I physically can. Story 57. There was a video of Austin Swift handling a situation with fans who showed up wearing headgear to the Eras tour. Security was going to remove them, and things were escalating. Austin ran over from the VIP booth to the general area, de-escalated the situation, and told them they were hilarious and to enjoy the show, but not to wear the headgear due to security concerns. He was in a unique position to do that. The de-escalation, kindness, and gentle demeanor left a lasting impression on me. I appreciate a sweet man. Story 58. Early on after my ex and I first met, he leaned over to kiss me. I gently pushed him away and said I wasn't ready and just wanted to be friends for the time being. For the month that followed, we spent a lot of time together as friends, and he didn't make another move. We got closer, and one night we ended up cuddling and watching television. After a couple of hours, he asked me if he could kiss me and paused, waiting for my response first. It might seem small, but as someone who has experienced sexual harassment, assault, and rape, this simple act of acknowledging my autonomy over my body meant everything to me. We were together for 6 years, and he never made me feel unsafe with him sexually. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.